Welcome back everybody to another video. In this video I'm going to show you some game settings when you have to force your game console to run 120 Hz. Now keep in mind that your settings for your display will all be subjective, and obviously the calibration of your TV will depending on your room and your lighting. But these are my settings that I use, and it benefits me, and obviously you can use these settings too. But the reason why I'm making this video is not really just to show you my game settings, but the fact is how to force 120 Hz and what to do when you have no HDR. So particularly when you have to force 120 Hz, because not every game supports 120 Hz, but you want to get the most optimal out of your game. So in order to run 120 Hz for every single game, or up to 120 Hz, particularly for the Xbox Series S here, you will have to disable your 4K. You have to disable your 4K for checkmark for the console. And when you disable the 4K capabilities on your console, just to make sure that your console push 120 Hz, what's going to happen is that you're not going to have HDR. But the good thing with the Sony X950G here is that you can go into your settings under the options for HDR, change it from auto to HDR10, and for your color space to BT 2020, and for your range, video range, since it's not a monitor, so it's a display, you want your video range to be limited. And if you're running on a monitor, it would be full, but since you're running on display, a TV display, you will have to run it, the video range, at limited. So that is what you do. You make sure you change HDR. So once you change your HDR settings to HDR, force it to HDR10, and your video range to limited, and your color space to BT 2020, what you're gonna notice that all your pixels will be more refined, and you'll get that simulated HDR effect, and it's gonna make your graphics look a lot more clean and beautiful, especially when you're running on a lower resolution, just to push 120 Hz. And also keep in mind, obviously, if you have a higher tier TV, you're not, you probably don't have to worry about the graphics or resolution as much. But for my X950G here, I only can run it at 1080p. So when the resolution is at 1080p, I want it to look as sharp and as best as I can, even though it's at a low resolution. But when you force the HDR from auto to HDR10 on this Sony X950G here, it totally changes the way the graphics look. Even if you leave it on auto, or if you don't have any HDR on or any simulation of HDR, it's still a beautiful TV, even though you're running at 1080p. Obviously, you have a higher tier; it's going to be higher, so you don't have to worry about that. But I mean, so you don't have to sacrifice the look of the graphics resolution just to get that that refresh rate when you want to run 120 Hz. So, and I know, like, yeah, it sucks sometimes when you have to sacrifice your resolution just to get the game handling to run that FPS. But at least with the Sony's, or particularly with this X950G here, with that option on the HDR, where you can change it to, when you can force the HDR to where you want it, and I'm sure other TVs will have the same option too, probably. And like I said, even if you don't have this particular model TV and or console, at least you get the gist of it, and maybe you get a better understanding that you can force 120 Hz, even though not every game supports it, but you can force it. And when you force it, you might not get HDR, but you can just simulate your HDR on your TV, if you did not know that. And at the same time, you guys can use my settings, and if you like it, but obviously it's all subjective. So that is it for this video. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Hooded Dragons out.